want to start with a story, really it's a letter, from John Adams in 1813. John Adams wrote Thomas Jefferson a letter. And at this point in their life, John Adams had already been president, and actually he and Jefferson had kind of a falling out. At the time of the American Revolution, when they're doing the Declaration, they're both working together to write the Declaration. They're friends. And then under Washington's administration, they have a falling out. They're not friends. They don't even talk anymore. Another founding father kind of brings them back together. And so the last few years of their life, there's a lot of letters between John Adams and Thomas Jefferson. If you read those letters, it's kind of like two grumpy old men just complaining back and forth. It's kind of ridiculous. However, one of the things John Adams says, this letter 1813, he says, remember all those years ago when you and I were together, when our nation was being founded? Do you remember what it was like? We were so diverse as a group. There's so many different ideas, a lot of disagreements, but we found unity together. And what he says in this letter, where did they find unity? Here's what he reminded Thomas Jefferson. He said the general principles on which the fathers have achieved independence were the general principles of Christianity. Now this is really interesting because they had a lot of disagreements, right? I mean, you have leaders from 13 colonies and from different areas in those colonies, and they didn't all get along, but what they found common ground together, John Adams says, it was the principles of Christianity. And for some today, if we look back at John Adams saying this might seem odd or bizarre, but really it's a reflection of how little of our history we know or have been taught along the way. Because if you take something as simple as the Declaration of Independence. The Declaration of Independence, there's 27 grievances, reasons we're separating from the king. What's kind of interesting, there was a historian back in the 1940s. Her name was Alice Baldwin. She was a professor at Duke University in the 1930s, 40s, and 50s, had a long tenure. She wrote a book called The New England Clergy and the American Revolution. And in that book, she identified every single issue in the Declaration had been preached from American pulpits prior to 1763. Which what she points out is when the founding fathers got together and they come up with all these ideas, it actually wasn't their ideas. It was the things they had learned from their pastors over the last several decades. And she actually goes through sermon after sermon after sermon showing how all of those issues, all those topics in the Declaration, they literally were from these sermons. The reason this is a big deal. Most people have no idea the influence of pastors, the influence of the Bible or Christianity on the founding of our nation, or even on the Declaration of Independence. And again, it's only because we don't know this history very well.